Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we'll be discussing some security aspect of ASP.NET Core application. Why this security aspect is important. So once the application is done, so what are the different security aspects that needs to be taken care while we are creating the application? And it is basically in terms of whenever we are going to create any API, we need to make sure that the API is always available. And again, there is no tampering while sending request or response. So this is very important in terms of optimization, also in terms of security of the API. So following best practices to create a good ASP.NET Core application is very important. Again, it is also very important that once your API is created, it is secure. So, what are the different security threats? So, again, if you talk, two main security threat is one is XSS and another is CSRF. So, again, whenever we talk about cross-site scripting, so again, it is a very dangerous way in which some malicious content is injected. So some script is injected, and that script again it is served to all the users. So for every request, it's very important that proper validation at the server is being done. Similarly, we have this CSRF in which uh, the browser is tricked so that into execution unauthorized action on a web application. So through browser, whether it is again tampering a token or whether it is manipulating the token just to get the access of an API. So these are the two things that can be very risky for a particular web API. So it's very important that proper validation, authorization, authentication is implemented while we are building the web applications. If we talk about some of the best practices that needs to be followed whenever we are creating REST API, first thing is token based authentication. This is very much popular. We have JSON Web Token through which we implement this token based authorization authentication. Then we have it's very important, again it's very common that whatever REST API you are creating, it should be working on HTTPS protocol. Then since it is API, then we should have the process to control the request. Otherwise, one user or one process can keep sending lot of requests, and again it will be very difficult for other users to get the responses. So again, limiting in case if there is any abuse on the access of the API. So rate limiting where there should be a specified number of calls that can be done by any particular user, and if it exceeds, then in that case there will be a rate limiting. So limiting request rates to prevent abuse and applying the principle of least privilege to API access. Then there is very important thing, again sensitive data, because in whenever there is a request for API, there are some sensitive data that is provided in the response. So in order to manage again all those things that we just discussed, again it should be on HTTPS so that everything, all the information is encrypted. Then if it is sensitive data, proper authentication, JSON based authentication authorization, so token based should be there. Then validation is very important whenever there is any request for that. Proper, it should be validated that proper authorized user should be, authorized request should be there in order to serve those data. Then we have encryption. Then we have the data that is sensitive. It should never go to errors or logs whenever we are creating logs, it should not be there. So all those things we need to make sure that sensitive data is taken care. Then we have very important thing like entity framework, that is the core for handling all the interaction with the database. So in order to use the entity framework, we need to install it from the NuGet package. And the entity framework core, whenever we are going to create any ASP.NET Core application, it is Microsoft Entity Framework for SQL Server. Then we have to define the DB context classes. We have to create the entity classes, because you know that in .NET Core framework we can create a whole set of tables from the classes. So there is a proper mapping from classes to table. So we have two different approach. One is code first approach and another is database first approach. So code based first approach is when we have already created the relevant classes and we have already created the relevant fields in the classes. So we just need to migrate all those things to the database, and those all classes will be uh, now converted into equivalent tables. So we don't need to log in into the database and create relevant tables. So we have this code first approach where the developer writes C# classes to define the database model. Then entity framework core migration are used to generate the database scheme. So we have command line tools. We can migrate everything from classes to tables using these command line tools. And if we talk about database first, so in this case, if we have a scenario where already tables are there, so we can again create equivalent classes for those tables. So entity framework class is very important, through which again we can configure the connection string in appsetting.json file, and again we can register the DB context with the dependency injection container. So whatever DB context classes we have created, we can inject it using the dependency injection container. Then in terms of deployment of ASP.NET Core application, there are a number of ways through which you can deploy. The simplest way that we have been using is deploying it on IIS server. So again, starting, we deploy our ASP.NET application on IIS. Now with the introduction of ASP.NET Core, we have another lightweight server called Kestrel. So in Kestrel, we can also deploy our application. Then all those latest deployment technologies, latest deployment techniques, like if you want to deploy using Docker, so we can create a full-fledged container, and then using container orchestration tool, we can deploy it like Kubernetes. We have, then in case of AWS, we have AWS Fargate, we have ECS containers. So there are a number of container orchestration tool in every cloud provider. So we can use that. We can deploy our ASP.NET Core application using Infra as a service, in which right from managing your operating system, your CPU, your RAM, your security groups, your public IP, everything will be set up. Then we will install the .NET framework, and after that, all those relevant servers we need to install, and then we can set up on the virtual machine or virtual instance. So it can be deployed on, and because it is cross-platform, so it can be deployed on any of the platforms. Then we have some cloud services, like we have app service, that is again platform as a service that we can use to deploy our ASP.NET Core application. So there are a number of ways, and again, right from traditional way to the advanced technique, everything can be used to deploy ASP.NET application. You can also create CI/CD pipeline. So again, using app service, you can connect your deployment to any of the repository. It can be GitHub, it can be Bitbucket, and the moment there is any code change, that Bitbucket triggers the app service. There are different slots. You can create different slots, and then it automatically deploys on the app service. We just need to set up the app service for the relevant framework. If it is .NET, so we can create .NET, and we can select the target platform, target version, and then it will be automatically done. Then we have a concept called microservices. So it's very important. Again, microservices again is a loosely coupled. Again, we can break up a big application, monolithic application, into multiple smaller application, and all these applications will be having its own databases. It will be loosely coupled, just like if we talk about any e-commerce application. If we talk about the different microservices, we will have a customer as a microservices in which we have the code as database. So we have the liberty to have different databases. It can be MySQL, SQL Server, NoSQL, and then again we have the container-based deployment. So we can have S3 bucket also. Similarly, we have a product as a microservice, category as a microservice, order as a microservice, then payment as a microservices. Then these microservices, if they want to interact, they want to pass any message, or if some global table or global database needs to be updated, then this can be also done using different microservices using API based, and also you can use the queue based, so that there will be a publisher and subscriber to make it fully asynchronous. So this was all about ASP.NET Core Advanced questions. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and thank you for watching this video.